You're not supposed to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Something's going to stop you. Something's going to come and jump out and be that block that's going to not allow you to be able to go through.
We're not lazy and we're not all the things just because we listen to our bodies and allow ourselves to replenish and renew. Trees don't bloom 365 days, and so neither should we.
Giving myself permission to, I don't need to set the alarm anymore. And I don't need to produce. And I don't need to be on all the time.
The seasons that a woman's body holds with our cycle, and knowing that that is natural and honoring that by listening to our bodies and understanding what our bodies are saying instead of being in resistance to them.
Hello, beautiful souls. It is Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. But before we dive into today's Wisdom Circle, I have a small request from my heart. If our conversations ever resonate with you or support you on your journey, please subscribe to our channel or like this video. It helps us grow Sacred You, welcome more powerful voices into this space, and keep you connected to everything we share. Thank you so much for walking this path with us, and let us begin with today's conversation.
So welcome back to another Ancient Wisdom Rising, Moon Medicine for Modern Hearts. I am super excited to be here. I want to acknowledge Sacred You for being able to give us this beautiful space where we can actually have this conversation. And I am so excited to be here with these beautiful ladies during this conversation. And so I invite everyone to just come into this space with an open heart, an open mind, and let's just get into the conversation. So for those of you who are catching the replay, please let us know if you have any questions. And yeah, so I'm super excited. So we'll start off with introductions. So we'll start off with I'm Gigadomi Gunkwe, and I'm your host of tonight's event. And my spirit name means Talking Feather Woman, and I'm also known as Rollie, ALLAIRE. I am from Northeastern Ontario, Canada, and I have two little people in the room with me tonight, so hopefully they will be quiet, but we are going to go with whatever natural flow that is supposed to happen. And so I will start off with Alison. Do you want to share who you are, where you're from?
Hi, I'm Alison ZEIDLER, and I live in northwestern Canada, where right now it's about 30 below. I'm a wellness facilitator. I help women feel better. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I am very happy to be here, to be part of this, to learn something, to share. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Alison. Phannie?
Yeah, equally. Thank you for hosting this and having us here. I'm Phannie. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm the founder of the Radical Love Movement, and I support people in coming home to themselves through their bodies. And I educate around movement, how the body actually works as a whole, complete thing, and how that reflects the truth of our consciousness, which is also whole and complete, as well as teaching the structures in consciousness and how it is that we get in our own ways. So I'm very excited to be here. The last conversation was awesome. So I'm excited to see what happens tonight.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. And Abby, what about you?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I always love being in this space with all you lovely women. My name is Abigail Teixeira, and I'm on Treaty 6 territory, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am a speaker, a published writer, an author, trauma recovery coach, feminine business mentor. I'm also a complex trauma survivor and a mama of 4. I help cycle-breaking women and femmes, especially mothers, healers, coaches, and creatives of the global majority really rise from survival mode and really start leading from their own truth. My claim that I like to speak over and over again is that you have your own beautiful, unique medicine that the world needs, and your lived experience is the medicine that the world needs. And so I am also the founder of the Healing Mama Collective, the Reclaim and Rise, and the Sovereign Seasons movements. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have a beautiful, enriching conversation here with you all today. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, ladies. And so I just want to talk a little bit about what is going on energetically right now as we're having this conversation. So we're in the waxing crescent. So we are moon phase. We're actually building towards the first quarter moon, which is on my February 25th. I don't know the time, so I don't know where that is on the other side of the world. We are in Taurus, which is grounding, embodiment, values, and slow growth. And during this time, this is about the seeds that we actually planted at the eclipse that are actually starting to take root in this fertile soil. The sun is in Pisces. So, in that energy, we're looking at compassion, intuition, flow, and surrender. And the archetype that we are connected with for the month of February is the sacred feminine, and it's about the rememberer. And so, these are some of the things that are actually going on that are happening. So, we had a solar eclipse, Saturn moved into Aries, Neptune has entered Aries. And so, what's coming up is Mercury retrograde in a few days, about 4 days. And the total lunar eclipse is actually going to be happening in Virgo as well. So that's the energy that we have, that we are kind of connecting with what it is that's happening. And so, and for those of you who like, I don't understand anything that means, it just has to do with what I was talking about in terms of those energies. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we actually kind of position ourselves and what it is that's going on. And so right now, it's still for us in the Northern Hemisphere, we are still in rest as we are moving into spring. And the Southern Hemisphere is into that full action still, where they are starting to get ready to move into the fall. And so these kinds of things are really important for us to be able to take into account from a global perspective. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about the conversations for tonight. So one of the questions that I have is, how do you reclaim rest in a world that values constant productivity? Who wanted to start?
Well,
Abby, you're unmuted. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll share because I'm freshly off of my opening ceremony for my year-long cohort that I have of women, and we are really moving into aligning with cyclical living rather than, the fast pace, the hustle culture, the being on 365 days that leads to burnout kind of thing. Because yeah, I've been there. I've been there myself. I've had extreme seasons of just pushing through when my body was begging for rest, and just feeling a lot of shame if I tried to slow down. Like I mentioned, I have 4 kids, and so there's always things to do. There's always things to do. I'm also a business owner, and trying to do it all without help, without asking for support, and while overriding my body's like screams for help, to rest, to slow down, all of that kind of stuff. And so for me personally, it took me a hospital visit in 2024 in the summer that really made me wake up to realize how I had been functioning and over functioning. And so last year in 2025, I really wanted to reclaim rest. I really said, this is my year of boundaries with my energy, with my time, and really started getting curious about cyclical living. I am Indigenous woman with Mayan descent and ancestry. And when I look back into my roots, my ancestors did things very differently than how we do it nowadays, right? And everything was, with the seasons and the cycles, and everything was in community, with one another. We grieved together, we mourned together, we celebrated, we harvested, all those things in community. And so I started to really get curious around that and implement certain changes in my life that really felt counterproductive for me, because I had never experienced, actually having a restful season. And so what that looked like for me in September, of 2025, the year that just passed, I just got this sudden urge that it was time to start slowing things down. And, I had a launch that was coming up in October. I was going to have all these big plans around it, and my body was saying no. And so I, took a little step back, and yeah, and I just went into started to go into rest. And then, throughout the winter, with the wintering season, really just stopped everything. And by December, I was really, really just focused and intentional with my time with my kids, with my family. And, as a result of that, went into this new year feeling just completely different, and now I'm starting to get the little sparks here and there, because as we're moving into spring, right? That's like the time where where the seeds that have been planted through the rest in these last few months can start to bloom. And so, yeah, this is just the exact right topic for me as what I'm moving through right now, and really reclaiming rest we all deserve it, right? And we're not lazy, and we're not, all the things, just because we listen to our bodies and allow ourselves to replenish and renew. Trees don't bloom 365 days, and so neither should we.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Abby. And it sounds like you and I are on the same type of path that we've just been called to. So I'm really awesome. This is really awesome that this is the path that you're on right now. Alison, I saw you nodding profusely during Abby's conversation. So where do you reclaim rest? So in a world that values constant productivity.
Very similar sort of path. I quit my day job in 2023 to focus on my business and went gung-ho, 14, 16-hour days. We've recently relocated from Whitehorse to Edmonton. I would love to get together with you, Abby. And so from September to December, I didn't focus on business. I didn't focus on anything. I spent time with my husband. And it was lovely for a while, for sure, giving myself permission to, I don't need to set the alarm anymore. And I don't need to produce, and I don't need to, be on all the time. And so late December into January, yes, again, those seeds are starting. I'm getting more ideas about what to do. And I've hired a marketer. I'm spending my hard-earned money because I can't do it all. And that is a lesson that I think women in particular need to learn, and give themselves permission to learn, that we can't do it all by ourselves. We need help. And it's okay to just be. If that means sitting and doing nothing and staring off into space for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or however long, just be with who you are. That's really important. And I'm learning to do that. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Alison. And Phannie, what about you?
Yeah, this is a great conversation. What comes up for me is how, for me, the way I reclaim is by listening to my body. Like Abby was saying so much, like her indicator was that her body was telling her something. And so like primarily learning to listen and be in communication with what your body's saying. But what's really coming up for me right now is the seasons that a woman's body holds with our cycle, and how we go through the 4 seasons every month. Like for me, there's winter every premenstrual, like from the end of premenstrual to bleeding, where I just am like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't ask anything of me. Not that I really get that right now because I have an 18-month-old, but I I want it. and knowing that is natural. It's reflected in our natural world in terms of the overall cycles that the seasons take us through, as well as our natural rhythms, and honoring that by listening to our bodies and understanding what our bodies are saying, instead of being in resistance to them or trying to fix them because they think something is wrong, because the model that they're given is this very like male-oriented world, very male-oriented body. All of the things that like I can't do, I can do, but I'm not built to do. It's just, it doesn't interest me. And so I think one of the ways of reclaiming for me is knowing myself on that level, and to like cultivating your ability to listen to what body's asking for in any given moment, because it is communicating with you, and it is, your body's always wanting to bring you into harmony. But we've been so disconnected culturally for so long from our bodies, and our bodies are nature, which I think people forget a lot. I'm like, you can connect to nature anytime if you choose to inhabit your own form, because it is a natural form. So those are some of the ways I reclaim rest.
Beautiful. I love that. And so I love what it is that you ladies have been saying about like just really tuning into in the last few months of being able to kind of like listen to that cycle of slowing down and doing the things that you guys need to be doing. Whereas my life changed in November, where things should have normally, and that because I do follow the cycles and I do follow things that are actually happening. And so for me, it was the having the, so in November, I ended up with having, and so then one of the things is just being able to have like, so we moved back into the house with my son and my son and his partner and the two kids. And then in November, we ended up with a new little one that we also have that we've been taking care of as well. And so being able to have that rest kind of, so when Phannie said, I have an 18-month-old, it's like, yeah, we have a 9-month-old who is a preemie, who's a 10 months old now, 7 months corrected. And so it's like you don't have that same rest, you don't have that same sleep, you don't have that same cycle, but being able to help her move through what it is that she needs to move through is really important to be able to do that. And so just being able to have that, having that conversation of slowing down. And so for me, it's trying to find balance between work and looking after a little one and still being able to spend as much time with these guys as possible. He was having a rough time being downstairs. So now one of the things that I heard you guys talking about is your body and knowing what your body is trying to tell you. And so I'm really interested to know, like, what were some of those cues? What were some of those things that told you that, yeah, I need to be slowing down. I need to be listening. I need to be focusing on what it is that I need to be doing. And also kind of tapping into what Phannie was talking about of our own natural rhythms. And so I don't no longer have a cycle, so I follow the rhythm of the moon, and that allows me to be able to have that. But so curious what the rest of you have going on. Who wants to start?
I can share.
Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, I really, really loved what both Alison and Phannie had to share. And there was a lot of, we all kind of weaved in, little pieces of our shares. And yeah, the key thing that really stood out to me and that is something to really think about and be aware of is that connection, right? In order for us to listen to our bodies, we need to actually know what our bodies like, what it's like to connect with our bodies, right? And for people like myself who was a trauma survivor, one of my ways that I survived, childhood abuse and all the things was to disconnect from myself, right? And so, and then that led to addiction for me as a teen, 15 years of addiction with alcohol. And, I was not at all connected to myself. And so my body could have been telling me many, many things. And it was, because intuition is strong. Even when we try to silence it, it is strong, right? And we sometimes purposely, like I purposely would just override it. And I would just, do these dangerous things and all this kind of stuff, right? And so when I entered into my recovery journey, and removed the substances and suddenly everything starts coming back online, I had to first learn how to be safe with whatever was coming up, right? Whatever emotion, feeling, because if I didn't feel sense safety, then I go back into survival mode. And one of a default thing is to disconnect, right? So like I'm not feeling safe feeling this right now, so therefore I'll dissociate, or things that are very easy to kind of fall back on, because that's the way I survived for a long time, right? So that just the soul thing of reconnecting with myself has been a really deep journey in the last 11 years of my journey. And I'm still learning to connect with myself, right? And listen and, like fully be able to trust, what comes through and all of that kind of stuff. So it's been a journey, because you need to, like I said, in order for you to know, about the cycles and all that kind of stuff, right? Like we have to actually understand, what our bodies are telling us and all of that kind of stuff. And the last thing I'll kind of share is, yeah, absolutely. I love like when I learned about our feminine cycles and how we cycle, like the seasons monthly, it just like made so much sense. It was so validating, because like for such a long time I would like really feel like I'd have a lot of like self-judgment and criticism, like why am I like this? Like why am I feeling like this during this time? And then it was like, yeah, no wonder, like now my family knows, that on my bleed weeks, those days are literally like highlighted in red, meaning like I'm doing minimal, like I am really, really, really focusing on rest and, wintering in my body and trying to take it easy and not do all the things. And yeah, same with you, like Phannie, right? Like, don't ask me for anything, okay? Like, and I also have kids, so sometimes I can't really, but be able to fully receive it in that way. But and that's the reason why we get grumpy during that time in the PMS is because our body is telling us like right now is not a time for you to be doing and tending and caring for everyone. This is the time that where now we should be tended to and cared for. And so then I get grumpy if you're telling me to do things when I'm like, needing that attending at that time, right? So yeah, those are just a few thoughts that I wanted to share.
I love that, Abby, and I love how that connects. Fanny, do you want to kind of chime in at this point, just because of like you had kind of opened up that door already about cycling and that kind of thing. So do you want to step in?
Yeah, well, you brought up the word balance, and I think balance is a really interesting concept that gets misconstrued a lot because like balance requires movement. Like we think of balance as like achieving a state that is then like fixed. Like you look at like a yin and yang sign and you're like, oh, if I could just be in that. It's like, but that's not life. Life is not stillness. Life is movement. And so there's the, Abby was talking about trauma, and I don't personally work with trauma, but I have done some trauma work. And what we work with in the body and like finding balance and knowing yourself, there's like all of these layers of knowing yourself. There's all these barriers to your essential essence. There's all this wounding that's taken place in your life. And we call it in somatic practice like a window of tolerance. Yeah. And so there's this balance of like honoring where you are and what's required of you. Like, let's talk about like parenting a young child. It's like you are now a steward to their life essence in the world. And if you're a conscious parent, then that's your orientation. But primarily they're patterning off of your nervous system. And so here's a balance. You're talking about balancing of like, well, if I'm not regulated, if I'm not connected to my needs and honoring them and being able to express and be cared for, then no matter what face I'm putting on in front of them, they're still receiving the truth of my beingness. And so there's this layer in here of balancing of like, yes, I can give this much of myself up to this point, and then after that I'll be the harmonic in my system won't be one that I necessarily want to pass on. And that happens. And talking about like what did Abby say? It doesn't matter, but this idea of balance and honoring yourself, and it's a worthwhile journey to learn yourself, to connect into your body. No matter where you are in that journey, taking a step towards it will serve you. And as soon as you start doing that, the more intuition will come up, the more communication will come up. And there's so much assumption that goes on with our body. Abby was saying, it's like, what's wrong with me, right? It's like, why am I like this? Because you're designed to be a natural body and you're in a very fabricated, fake world. And so it becomes very hard to be who you are. And so there's also that balance. There's like, what is actually required? What am I assuming is required of me? What am I projecting because it's how I kept myself safe, is being a certain way or taking on so much or not asking for help because asking for help wasn't safe at some point, and getting real with yourself in that way. But you have to want it. There's like I learned a long time ago, like I can't want change for other people. Like it doesn't help them at all. It just hurts me. And so I'm very specific now about like, if you want it, I will be guide for you. I will show up, I will whatever, but there's that element in you, and you know it or you don't. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, you feel that inside of you, like then seek out a guide who's a little bit further down the path than you. But yeah, like balance is movement and the body is ever changing. And so you have to listen to what's now, not to what has worked before. I think I circled around a lot of stuff, but
Hence the whole point of cycling, right? So, because we do circle around and we do come around. And so, Alison, what about you? Where does that fit for you?
Spot on for so much of it. I remember always having having a yearning, a feeling of yearning growing up, but I never knew what that meant. And having a lot of anger and dysfunctional growing up. And I had to be in control of everything. And it took me many, many years to break through the anger and find out there were emotions underneath the anger. And that's when I was able to start listening to myself, listening to my body, hearing it, and learning to trust, other things, nature around me, but also myself. And Phannie, I mean, you talk about balance, and there's balance in ourselves, in the atoms, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And it is movement. Without movement, we stagnate or we die. And it's so important to start to take steps, even if they're little tiny steps, to tune in to our bodies, to tune in to the thoughts that we are saying to ourselves. Most of us have that hamster wheel that goes and goes and goes and goes. And a lot of that is negative. Oh, I was stupid. Oh, why did I do that? Oh, I should have been better. Blah, blah, blah. And that impacts everything too. It creates a barrier to our hearts and to being open. And I'm really grateful that, my life completely fell apart in my 30s because I couldn't function anymore, being in control of everything. And I had to relearn. Well, maybe I had to learn for the first time who I was and who I wanted to be, and start that journey now. Yeah.
So I want to kind of pick up on what it is that Alison was just saying. So just to kind of, for Abby or Phannie, is like, so she was talking about like that having to learn. And because I think that is definitely something that even people who are listening, but where do I start? What do I do? How do I learn how to be able to do this? Like, this is what I know. And so how can you kind of go with that? Like, how can you pick up on that, learning something new and starting all over again? And yeah, Phannie, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah. A few things popped into my head. One, trauma, super great for that. Hey, Alison said in her 30s, it's like you hit this point where you've lived in your pattern of dysfunction long enough that you're like, there has to be something else, or you have a traumatic event. It's typically what I've discovered. I thankfully also had an identity shattering trauma at 19, so I got to get started really early. It was, thank my parents for that one. But what you do is if you feel the yearning, if you feel that you're done with the trap of your existence as it is right now, if there's pain that you're ready to face, if there's whatever, you find a guide that resonates with you. There's this journey of awakening that's called the hero's journey. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the hero's journey, but it's every story that you've ever heard over and over again. It's Jesus, it's Superman, it's all of these stories where you fall asleep to who you are, you act as like a small version of yourself, and then you meet a wise man or you have an event that makes you start acting in favor of your heart. Yeah. And then once you start acting in favor of your heart, you meet resistance, you meet the dragon. Yeah. And the stories. And then you have to pacify that dragon so that you can continue living the truth of who you are. And the thing when you learn about like we talk about archetypes, or like I work with structure, like the structure of creating the structure of awakening, like it becomes impersonal. Like right now, everybody, when they're still in their wounding, if they're ready to take the step, but they haven't yet, they're living in their perception. They're living in a projected world that isn't actuality. It's just reality as they've defined it. And when you're ready to step out of that, it's much more successful when you choose someone who resonates with you to help you along that journey. And so if you're ready to, I would start, asking. Something that I do before I started working with coaches or really getting like officially trained is like ponder. And for me, Alison was talking about the hamster wheel of thinking. Yeah, for me, pondering is thinking with wonder. And so it's very open-ended. It's like, what could that be like? What would that be like? And when you start to allow that aspect of your consciousness, your thinking mind, to be open, and that way you'll start getting information. And I would recommend you act on it. It took me years to realize that. I've also been very intuitive my whole life, but I used it dysfunctionally to keep myself very small. And now I'm like, that's an action I can take. So now I do that. Or now it took too freaking long. Now I know it. So yeah, if you're ready to learn, then be willing to be taught and guided.
What about you, Abby?
That was so good. I was trying to take notes, but anyways. Yeah, Phannie brought up such a great point, and exactly what I was thinking when you asked that question. I know I can only speak for how I kind of started taking the first steps. And for me, it absolutely had to be a rock bottom moment in order for me to finally make the decision that this life that I'm leading right now, this lifestyle, is heading to a very dangerous place and a place that I may not be able to come back from. And that's when I had to make a choice, right? A choice. And for me, it happened in a jail cell. And so, and it wasn't my first time. And so it was definitely a rock bottom moment. And then it was like, now what? What do I do? Like, I have no idea what even my first step is. I just know that I can't keep going down this path. And, this is killing me. And, the first thing that had to happen for me was for me to seek support and reach out for help. And in my journey, it happened to be a 12-step program. That was my first step, and that really helped me in the beginning, phases of my journey. And then it was just like Phannie mentioned, just being really curious and really willing and open to where the path is going to lead me, because I haven't been down this path. And so I can't say that, like, this is right, this is wrong. Like, like, for me, I've always been one to learn things on my own. Like, I have to make the mistakes. I have to check it out myself. I have to do it, like, for me to really learn, and then form my own opinion and say, okay, this was really helpful, this was not, and so I'll put that aside, but I gave it a try, right? And so for me, the willingness went a really long way, and it led me down the path of opening doors to different modalities, different people in my life, different support systems, and absolutely having a mentor, having somebody that can guide you and help you save a couple of steps is always helpful, and yeah, and like, it's once you kind of go down that path like that's why I share that, your story is your medicine, because there are others who are out there who have a very similar kind of scenario going on in their life, and they want the answers, they want the steps, they want the help and the support, and only you can offer that to them because you've been down that path, right? And it's a really beautiful kind of reciprocal kind of cycle, and so the willingness, as long as you're willing and you're open, see where the path will take you, and yeah, just have curiosity, and yeah, make the decision. And then it's just about managing it day to day, right? You make the decision today, and then you manage it tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. And before you know it, like myself, I look back, I'm like, 11 years, what? So yeah, thanks.
And it's just really important that we actually take that next step and take those connections of what it is that we have going on. And so the last 2 years have been a whirlwind for us, and so trying to figure out how to navigate it. And then then they threw a baby in our lap in November, so it's like, okay, so how do we do this? What are we going to be doing, and how are we going to move forward? And so I've been pushing, and so on Friday, when I should have been doing my moon medicine circle, I wasn't able to, because I was going and going and going and trying to get things organized and trying to get things done. And I pulled a muscle in my shoulder, pulling all the way down into my back and into my pelvis. And so that made things a little bit difficult for me to be able to sit and move. And so lying down was uncomfortable, sitting was uncomfortable, moving was uncomfortable. And so it was a matter of like making sure that I had some rest and I did the things that I needed to be doing. And so much so that this morning I don't sleep in typically. And it was 10:30 this morning before I got out of bed and was like, wow, and I still got up with the baby through the night and I still did all the things that I needed to be doing that way. And I woke up when my grandson and granddaughter got up with my daughter-in-law. My body said like, no, you just need to rest tonight. You need to rest this morning so that I can be here tonight so that I can do what it is that I need to be doing. And so, but it's when we don't listen, something happens that brings us forward. And so for those of you who are listening saying, well, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, is remind yourself that it is important, because if not, and you're not supposed to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, something's going to stop you. Something's going to come and jump out and be that block that's going to not allow you to be able to go through. And so it's just really important that we need to have, so going back to the word balance, when we were talking about balance, and Phannie was talking about yin and yang and having those two things kind of flowing. And if you actually look at that yin and yang image, it's like one side is like big, one side is small, and it has that movement that goes through all the time. So sometimes we are supposed to be pushing and sometimes we're not. And when you use the cycles of the moon, sometimes you are supposed to be pushing and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're supposed to be having fun. Sometimes you're supposed to be like on task because you're in Aries moon, Aries fire moon, or you are in Cancer moon where you are slowing down and enjoying family and with the people around you. And it's just really important for you to be able to figure out what that rhythm looks like for you and what that rhythm is like for yourself. And so I really wish that I have, when I actually had my cycles, understood and known about being able to follow those cycles and those paths. But now it's that learned, and I get to teach that to my granddaughters, and I get to teach that to the other women that are coming up. And as I continue to do that, and when I decide that when I'm pushing too much, the universe comes back and says, whoa, you need to slow down. And so I would never give up that opportunity that fell in our lap in November where we were able to help Leah. But at the same time, it's like, I'm 55. That is a lot of energy. I'm almost 56. And that's a lot of energy when you're moving into that stage. And there's a reason why you don't have babies at this age and you are the grandmother and you are helping at this stage, because like your body doesn't have that same rhythm that Phannie would have and that Abby would have at this time of their life when they're moving through. And so, Alison, how does that kind of land with you in terms of like cycles? Like, so if you actually look at like not necessarily seasons or moon cycles, but just in your lifetime. So like kind of looking through your lifetime of cycles of where things seem to be flowing and then all of a sudden they're not. So like how does that work in terms of that cyclical living that you've experienced?
Yes, and so when I'm in it, I don't recognize it. But looking back, I can recognize some of those cycles. And I like to say that, my early childhood into my 20s, even into my 30s, was more about, let's say, anger and strong emotions and fighting and trying to figure out life and not succeeding very well. And so it was an uncomfortable time. But out of that, I got into more of a flow, more of a water sort of concept, and learned so much. And one of the things that helped me immensely was finally knowing and understanding that all those feelings that I was feeling for so long, I wasn't the only one feeling them. I wasn't alone. Other women felt them. And there wasn't anything wrong with me. So sort of coming from that cycle of feeling inadequate, of, as Phannie said, making myself small. And now that's gone. I'm in my 60s now, so I don't care what people think of me anymore, right? I wish I had known that earlier, but apparently I had to go through stuff to get here, right? and I mean, I found so many tools to help. Al-Anon, 12 steps, counseling, anger management, all sorts of things. Learning about energetic balancing, energy healing. That was amazing. That helped. Everything that I tried to, back then, my whole thing was fixing myself. It all helped. I could take parts of this and parts of that and apply them to my life. But I had to put it all together for me, right? As Abby was referring to. I have to try them. How do they land in my body, my mind? And I think I'm going into another cycle now, and I'm not sure how that's going to look, but it's a little exciting and a little scary, and that's okay. It's a journey. There's no, I have to be here by next week. It's just, I finally learned to go with the flow a little bit, which means I'm not fighting anymore, and life is a whole lot easier.
And I love the fact that you use the word journey, because that is definitely what it is that we're on. And so when we talk about like having to fix things or that we were broken or things like that, is one of the things that I have learned over the years is, and not that I don't ever use those words because I kind of fall back into some of those patterns at times, is reminding ourselves that we are not broken and we don't need fixing. We just simply need to know where's the crossroad and how we're actually going to move through that next fork in the road. And so because every time that we hit that wall or hit that resistance or hit whatever it is or hit the bottom, like Abby was talking about, right? So like when we get there is a crossroad. We can either continue on this path and continue to do whatever it is that we need to do. And it is a choice that we get to make, whether it's conscious or unconscious, or we can actually go down this way. When we go down this way, we don't always know what that's going to lead, and we don't always know what that's going to be. And so Alison, who mentions like, I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. And it takes us a long time to be able to get there, especially when we're codependent. And so I know that I can speak for myself in terms of being codependent, and those dysfunctions that I grew up with helped serve whatever it is that I needed to do to be able to survive what I needed to survive. But at the same time, it also gave me some very strong skills that allowed me to be able to protect myself and to be able to make decisions for myself and to be able to move forward. And so Phannie was talking about like being at 19 and getting started with her healing journey. And I was in and around that same, like I was 14 when our family hit that crossroads, when we hit that brick in the wall. And so I'm very fortunate in Ontario. I don't know about the rest of Canada, but mental health services at the age of 12 do not no longer need parental consent, so we can actually access our mental health services. And so I was able to continue with being able to get that support and being able to get that going. And when I went away to treatment, family treatment, I was 19, and so that was the most challenging time that I actually went in, because they challenged everything that I knew. And so just being able to go through those patterns and just remembering that this is a journey, and that there's no path that you're going to be able to take that is going to be 100%. It is always about your choices. It is about your outlook. It is about the way that you see things as to how things are going to move ahead. And I can't speak to anyone else specifically, but I can speak to Abby, who shared that she ended up in jail twice, of being able to like kind of like get her back on track. And so, and oftentimes people look at that as being like, oh my gosh, like she's never going to amount to anything. And I'm sure that those are things that you've heard over and over again, Abby. Is that, do you want to speak to that a little bit about like those challenges of what somebody may be running up against because where they're at right now of, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for me, when I started on my healing and recovery journey, that, obviously, like I said, it kind of took the catalyst for me was the jail cell for the second time, and, being in trouble with the law and, all the things and what was at stake. The reason why I was in such a bad state was because I had, up until that point, been running away from the original, like the origins of my pain, like the things that I had experienced as a kid, the abuse, all that kind of stuff. And no one ever talked about it. And I never talked about it. And when I did, when I was a child, I was called a liar. And, that making up stories, all of that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of trauma around speaking up and having a voice. And it needed to go somewhere. And so for me, like, I had to numb it. I had to numb that and silence that desire, that need. Yeah, like, it's just, I had to just silence it. And the way I did it was through alcohol. And so, like I said, once I removed the substance and I sought out help, and I started to heal in community and hear other people share their own stories. It was really powerful for me to finally hear that, first of all, I wasn't the only one that had experienced these things. I had thought I was, because no one ever talked about these things. So I thought it must be me. It must be only me. And, and it really was, I describe it, it was like wearing this heavy cloak for all of my life that was drenched in shame and reeked of secrecy. Like, it was, and so for when I finally started to hear other people share about these things, I was able to remove that cloak, and and with it went the shame. And for me, having such self-compassion for the version of me that, got myself into this kind of situation, not blaming myself, not, but taking accountability and responsibility, right? But, that's when I started to really, yeah, just reclaim myself, right? And so I started on pretty, like, within probably after around my 4th year of, like, my healing journey, I actually started to heal out loud, and it was very empowering for me. So I started, like, sharing on, on social media and things like that. Yeah. So for me, I started to really, and it didn't start like all at once where I was like divulging all these like intense details about my life or anything like that. It was just little baby steps, like celebrating when I was 4 years sober, and just leaving it at that, not like, divulging big things and all that kind of stuff. That came gradually, and to the point where I'm a pretty open book. I've, published my story in several different books and things like that. And, and I do it because I know that it helps somebody else who feels shame because they've experienced similar things. And, to be able to put a name or name an experience that you felt you're the only one that ever experienced it is so powerful. And so for me, that's how I've been able to really, like, there's nothing that could be said about me or exposed about me that I haven't already exposed myself, So, like, but it came gradual, right? And yeah, and so that was a journey, and it continues to be a journey in itself of just
And
radical
that
self-acceptance. Yeah.
and that is super powerful. So, Allison, what about you? Like, how does, like, have you had that, like, that hitting that forefront of what of your own healing and kind of moving ahead?
Yeah, mine came, I just had a complete meltdown. I couldn't function at work, in relationships, reached out to counselors, hysterically crying. And then it was, again, it's the baby steps. It's me being able to go into a video store and, stand up for myself and make a statement instead of hiding behind, okay, I'll just do what everyone says and then things will be fine. Because that's kind of how I grew up. And finding your voice and making a baby step, like looking at a cashier in their eyes and saying thank you. So some people just literally can't look at someone in the eyes because they're so afraid or full of shame or whatever emotion it is that's pushing them down. And mine was fear and anger. And, every day at the end of the day, take your hand and pat yourself on the back because you got through another day. Whether you took any baby steps or not, right? You still got through the day, and look how far you've come from a year ago or 10 years ago. It's really important to honor yourself. So that was also a huge learning curve for how to do that for myself.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. Phannie, what about you? Where does that land with you?
Yeah, I was reaching back into my memory banks of the turning point. And after I had this traumatic event when I was 19, which was it was a long time ago. I can't do time math right now, but I, I had this, I was partying one night, I was numbing myself, I was trying to avoid the deep suffering and, feeling of betrayal and whatever, avoiding enraged, all of those things. And I was doing uppers and downers in the same night. And I had this moment of sitting on a couch, just like very intoxicated to say it politely. And I remember like seeing two like feet come and stand in front of me, and I like looked up and I was standing there. And I said to myself, what are you doing? This isn't who you are. And those words like struck me deep in my bones of like, this isn't who you are. And so from that moment forward, I was infused with this question of like, well, who am I? And that it was my inner compass for all of the different modalities I tried, all of the paths I took on reclaiming and discovering who I was. And, it was a gift. That moment was a real gift. And I was fortunate enough that I, for whatever reason, chose to listen. I guess it was such a startling experience. Be like, I'm talking to myself. What? But you don't need to have that sort of an extreme experience, but we all have a knowing inside of us. And if you feel the call, be willing to follow it. And I've heard a thread through all of our stories of like being willing to be in the unknown. It's like, your pattern of dysfunction, the way that, like the way Alison controlled herself into insanity and the way that Abby numbed herself into self-forgetting. It's like, that you've done that repeatedly. To step out of that, to step into the new you is unknown. And so there's always a level of accepting that unknown and being willing to discover. And I loved that Abby used the word curiosity, because it's literally like one of the tools I use in everything that I do is like, be curious. Curiosity opens you into wonder, and that, naturally connects you to possibilities. And when you're curious, like curious is also your inner child. So if you have a hard time connecting to curiosity, then let that be your window into what needs to be focused on. But for me, it was that moment, and the question of who am I truly without any of the bullshit that was surrounding me was what gave me my inner compass to take me through my journey.
Beautiful. I love how where you came, Abby, I mean, Phannie, about being able to like about being who you are. And because I think that was definitely something that we all talked about with regards to what it is that we've experienced and what it is that's happened, and just being able to just be in that space. And so just being able to be where you are, know that it's not going to be perfect, know that something is going to happen that is going to bring us to the other side, and just being able to be just okay with that learning and that next step and where things are going to be. And so like even tonight, having my grandson here who came over, and like he didn't stay quiet, he came over, but he was in distress when his mom brought him up. She's like, he just needs some place to be able to come and cool, and Nikum's room is a place where he gets to actually be relaxed. And so it's like, well, I have to work, so how am I going to do this? Yeah. And so being able to like, how do we do this? And so I could have been like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't try and help navigate him. What happens if he starts talking? And if he starts talking, then we just do whatever it is that I just finished doing. That is the blue spoon, buddy. And so just being able to have that opportunity that things are not going to be perfect. Things are just going to be the way that they are, and just allowing things to be accepting. And so like this is a prime example of just being able to go with that flow and just doing whatever it is that we need to be doing. And so his little child energy needed to be in this room today for some reason. And so somebody needed to hear his little voice. Somebody needed to hear his curiosity and what it is that's going on. And so I want to honor each and every one of you for sharing and sharing our vulnerability of the things that we've experienced. And because somebody out there is listening, and if that is you and there's something that touched you as like, oh, this is my next path, this is what I need to be doing, then run with it and allow yourself to, as the ladies have said, be curious, be willing to be able to take that next step and move yourself through that next part of your journey. And so thank you, everyone. If there was somebody that you wanted to be able to connect with, somewhere in the description of where you are watching or listening to this from has everybody's links. And so I invite you to reach out to anyone who you want to be able to share and connect with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today for the Wisdom Circle. So thank you, everyone. Come and check the links in the descriptions and connect with these wonderful women. And see you next time for the next Wisdom Circle. Thank you.